Tell me when we're on. I can't. Oh, we're on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup coming to you live. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I'm the news editor for The Cradle, and as usual, I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, content creator and writer for The Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for The Cradle, Sharmin Narwani. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we start, always a reminder, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. And above everything else, please check out our Patreon, where you can become a direct supporter of The Cradle, support independent journalism, especially in times such as this, in which truly the last remnants of international law have been shattered. There, we are simply back to the law of the jungle. I think this is not an exaggeration. Of course, I'm talking about the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who is now, as we speak, being transferred to a federal court in Manhattan to face charges of conspiracy to commit narco terrorism, etc. Trumped up charges, a complete violation of any law, of any convention, of the UN Charter. Absolutely ridiculous what we have witnessed this weekend, but is a sign of the times, as the title of this transmission says. Trump's God complex. He has now threatened Cuba. He has now threatened Colombian President Gustavo Petro. He has threatened Greenland. He has threatened Iran as well. We will get into all of that. You know what? I think we should get right into the discussion before going into any much more news. The Security Council is meeting right now. We will update you as it happens. I want to hear your guys' thoughts about this weekend's events.
Was he kidnapped though? Kenny, why don't
Abduction,
you
if you
put up
will.
that? Why don't you put up that BBC directive to all its journalists? Because the BBC says avoid using the word kidnapped.
And
can
abduction
use-
too.
You can use captured. Please attribute this to the U.S. description of the operation. Example: the U.S. said Maduro was captured during the operation. You can use the word seized. Acceptable for use in our own reporting where appropriate. Avoid using kidnapped.
Well,
Unreal.
a sign of the times. A sign of the times. I mean, who's next? Truly, here, who is next? What is happening here? What is the plan for Nicolas Maduro? And does Donald Trump even have a day after plan? Because now he's promising the oil is going to start flowing. We are in control of Venezuela. We will bomb Venezuela again if the government doesn't act the way we want to. Because at the end of the day, what this ended up being was a decapitation operation, right? They took Maduro, but then the structure of the Chavista government in Caracas remains intact. We haven't seen internal fractures. We haven't seen a rebellion. We haven't even seen protests in favor of the kidnapping of Maduro. If anything, we've seen the complete opposite. We are seeing huge protests in opposition to this imperial act of aggression. I mean, honestly, an act of war. This is what it was. If you kidnap a sovereign nation's president, this is an act of war. So yeah, there's really no other way to describe it. It's really state terrorism on top of everything else that Venezuela has suffered. And at the end of the day, it really does seem just another step towards an eventual war against Iran.
I mean, the thumbnail on our podcast today is Trump's God complex. And that's kind of how a lot of people are seeing this. I mean, he's just unleashing everywhere with no plan, as you said, Esteban, no day after plan, no thought to consequences, no thought to the violation of international laws and norms, setting new dangerous standards. Okay, in international law, there's something that's called when there's not a law for something, but it becomes customary, then it kind of becomes applicable to the rule book, okay? And now we're talking about, bringing in, what did you call it? Decapitations and abductions of heads of state, making this customary. And of course, social media was all abuzz about, can we do this to Macron? Can we do this to Netanyahu? Can we, it's just creating a very, very dangerous environment. And I don't know that we can say what countries will be next in particular. I mean, there are signs, but everything seems like a psychological operation. Because the U.S. doesn't seem to have any kind of rule book where it comes to foreign policy now, where it comes to military action, they just throw out teasers and distractions, right? Oh, look, we're going to do Nigeria and then it's Iran. Or look, we're going to do Iran and then it's Greenland. Like, there's nothing to go by. And I think that's part of Trump's rule book, like how he operates as a businessman, treat them with kindness and then punch them so hard they didn't see it coming, That's fine. I just want to say, and I'm sure all of us have heard this notion in our physics classes somewhere at some point, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, okay? This is Newton's third law of motion. What it essentially means is that force always occurs in pairs. If one object pushes towards you, okay, another pushes against another, the second object pushes back on the first with the same force in the opposite direction. What the Americans do is try to create momentum. This is what we've talked about on this podcast for a long time. I've used the word kinetic in particular to describe Israeli actions, constantly in motion, constantly issuing statements, constantly bombing different targets. It's kind of what the Americans are doing. They've seen the success of Israel doing this, meaning not that Israel's won anything, but the fact that the world is clamoring to catch up with Israel's violations and abuses, and there's been no repercussion yet. And so it's sort of, the same act now that we're seeing. So repercussionless actions. However, the repercussions don't have to come from the UN Security Council. They don't have to come from international courts. What I think Trump is not calculating is that the repercussions, the pushback, will happen in ways he does not expect. Now, for instance, one of the things about Venezuela, they're saying, oh, they took, he's taking their oil. But in fact, we know there's complications about that. This is heavy crude. This is not the easy stuff. Yeah. It's very hard to refine. There are only a few places that refine this stuff. In order to actually extract the heavy crude, there's going to have to be a major capital investment into Venezuela's oil fields. That will take time, et cetera, et cetera. One of the other things people are saying is this is actually to prop up the petrodollar when it's kind of disappearing, right? Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. Trump's actions, or Western actions, like threatening to take, to freeze Russian monetary assets, right? Like in the billions and billions of dollars. Their, UK efforts, for instance, I think the Europeans held Venezuelan gold, taking over the natural resources of an important country, a member of OPEC. These things may, for instance, make people say, you know what? We're now not going to trade in the US dollar. We don't want to be exposed to this. All right. And I don't think Trump knows what's coming. He cannot calculate what people are doing in their own private meetings. Now, the opposite reaction will come from not just US adversaries, but the circles they run in. So from the BRICS to the EAEU to the SCO to the non-aligned movement, okay, to groups of loose alliances that are taking place in Asia, on the African continent, where they decide collaboratively to stop doing something or to stop something from happening. And this is where the Americans cannot possibly anticipate, because this is not 20 years ago where pushback was non-existent. There are so many options now. That's all I'll say about it. For every action, there is going to be an equal and opposite reaction. And whatever Trump unleashes will just unleash more of these things. This is a law of physics. It's not possible for your adversary or others to sit still. It isn't. This is a big action. This is a tsunami on the global stage.
I
There are
mean,
going to be no ripples? Of course there will.
Trump literally opened Pandora's box, and there's no,
Yeah.
there's no putting back the toothpaste into the tube. We are now living in this era. About the oil, you're completely correct, Charmin. I mean, it's gonna take billions of dollars, maybe up to $1 trillion in investment, just to get Venezuela's refineries and oil infrastructure to be working again, because this country has been hit by over a decade and a half, almost 2 decades of crushing U.S. sanctions. So there's that question, right? Oil majors, they're not rushing to go back to Venezuela, even though the Telegraph today was reporting that BP and Shell are actually willing to go back into Venezuela, but they need to invest a lot of money. And then there's the actual question of what about the Venezuelan people, right? Trump a few weeks ago was trying to get oil majors to commit to going back to Venezuela, and these were the questions that they were bringing up. And as a matter of fact, just yesterday, Marco Rubio gave us in an interview, I think it was on NBC News, he said it pretty straight. He said, we don't need Venezuela's oil. What we want is for China, Russia, and Iran not to get it. They say this is our hemisphere. Why is Russia? Why is China? Why is Iran here? I mean, spoken like a true gangster, spoken like a true pirate. This is like a torn out of the of the pages of The Godfather, the posture that Rubio and Donald Trump are taking. And just one last thing, because I really want to hear from Karim about his thoughts on this weekend, but I just want to lay this out. Like, my perspective on what happened is that Donald Trump is a man who loves a spectacle. When they asked him about the operation, he said it. He said, I was watching it from my room like a movie, right? He loves spectacle, the Soleimani killing, the bombing of the Iranian nuclear sites, all for spectacle, all for shock value. So by doing what he did with Nicolas Maduro, he got his trophy. And now we're seeing, as you said, Charmin, the deployment of a PSYOP, of a psychological operation that is seeking to fracture the leadership that is left in Venezuela and to fracture the support of the Venezuelan people for the revolutionary movement known as Chavismo. So because they know, Rubio knows, and Trump knows, that this is a very powerful movement. This is why they threw Maria Corina Machado under the bus right after Maduro's kidnapping. Trump was asked about her, and he was like, she has no respect, she has no capabilities, she's not worth the trouble. Now the Washington Post is saying it's because she dared to accept the Nobel Peace Prize, which was described as the ultimate sin for Donald Trump. And he's been very clear. We want the oil, we want control of the oil, not because we need it, just to not let anyone else have it. So having said that, Karim, what do you make of the events of the weekend? I know you have plenty of opinions.
Yeah, no, what happened is really huge, and of course it has many things to follow. But if we dissect what happened first, I think what happened also because I'm referring to our thumbnail is because Trump is not only narcissistic, he's also narcissist. Sorry, he's also he always had. Got a God complex, and now it got worse. Of course, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they fueled it by giving him $1 trillion. Bombing Iran also fueled it. His relations with the Israelis, of course, fueled it. Him asking donors, for instance, Jewish donors that donated for him. He said just like 10 days ago, $100 million is not enough for me. You have to give me 250, and they tell him okay. The same he did with the Japanese. They came to invest with 100 billion. Then he asked them for 250 billion. They told him okay. So this he really is acting and thinks that he's God and nobody is facing him. And of course, this led
but
to
you know,
what
Karim,
happened.
just to your
Yes.
point, it's because nobody's really standing up to him, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's the point that I'm coming to. So, of course, what happened is that because nobody is standing against Trump internally and outside the borders. Yani. Also, let us not forget the humiliation that he brought for Denmark and for Canada and for Mexico, even in his first term. And nobody said anything, and everybody, okay, they know the United States is very powerful. And everybody is afraid of the United States, and nobody is ready to sacrifice anything to face the United States. I think this is one of the problems, and I think also what happened is a very good thing for the United States, but in the short term. But on the long term, it's catastrophic, and it will accelerate the downfall of the U.S. empire or the U.S. hegemony or the U.S. Domination, name it as you want. Because of course, what happened now, everybody is afraid of the United States. And Venezuela is not a small country. Venezuela is a big country, is a influential country in Latin America, and also they have millions and millions. And it's not Bahrain or Lebanon or a small country to do such an operation. And it was
Nearly
unfortunately
30 million people.
yeah, nearly 30 million, and they warned them before, and it was not sudden. Yani, you warned the country, and you did this successful operation. No American was injured or died until now. They didn't say anything. Yani. According to the news and the information, it was a very successful information, and also afterwards he acted, and we saw him in the airplane when he said he said Cuba is next. He warned Iran. He warned Colombia. Although Colombia, historically, it's not an enemy for the United States. He's just willing to do it.
There's 8 U.S. bases inside Colombia.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now everybody, after what happened, is asking: is Iran next? Are they capable to do this in Iran? Are they capable to do this in Cuba? For me, unfortunately, I don't think Venezuela was prepared enough. We saw Maduro dancing, and he's like downplaying everything that Trump said, and the Iranians did the same when the first time they were struck by Israelis. They were downplaying it. They were saying that we are negotiating with the Americans, and everything is okay. Don't hear from the Israelis, and they were struck. So I think really these countries, the countries that are sovereign and the countries that want to stay sovereign, they should take everything coming from the Israelis and from the Europeans and from the Americans seriously. They should protect their assets. They should also take actions, not to wait what also the United States should do.
I think this is exactly a good point, Karim, because I've been saying the same since it happened. It's time to take action. Everyone really needs to stop being reactive, because if you continue to be reactive and respectful of international law,
and I want to ask you something, Esteban. For instance, the ships and warships of the United States were at the coast of Venezuela since like at least 2 months. And they were able to hit them, but they didn't because it's the United States. Well, I think if they hit them, there will be, of course, maybe answers from the Americans. They might bomb Caracas. They might also kidnap Maduro. But on both ways, they did it. So these countries are unable to make actions because they are afraid of the United States, and they are afraid of what the United States might do. But the United States is doing what it wants, whether you confront them or not. They should understand that also.
I think that's the message of this weekend, like I said, right? And actually, because I watched last Thursday's episode, by the way. Thank you to Mohammed Soidan for being there. It was a very good episode. And the title of it really, struck a chord with me. Kill or be killed, right? That's what you guys called it. And I think this is the era we're living in now. You either, protect your interests and are willing to do anything for the protection of them, or you simply, lay down and accept the reality that you have a gangster regime, a terrorist regime, running amok around the world. Who's next? Truly,
nobody is safe.
Anyone can be next. And just to quickly answer your question, Karim, there's many versions of what happened on Saturday. There's many versions, most of them really coming out of Western media. So, the desk of Marco Rubio, the desk of Pete Hegseth. You have to be very careful with the information that is coming out. But what I say, the facts of what we know from what we've seen is that Trump wanted his trophy, got his trophy. I think it's pretty apparent that there had to be some kind of collusion from inside, right? I mean, you said it, Karim. They've been warned for months, since August. They were talking about, he said it in front of the cameras, Donald Trump, I have approved CIA operations inside Venezuela. So now you have the outcome of all of that. And this really better be a lesson for everyone else.
I disagree a bit. I don't think I don't think the U.S. has beaten Venezuela. I don't think they won a war. I don't think it's victorious. I think U.S. foreign policy is so Hollywood
Yes.
for decades. It's
Yes.
so Hollywood. It's, you know, those Western towns on a Universal Studio lot, for instance, right? Like you have the saloon, you have the sheriff's office, you have the the grocery store, and there's nothing behind them except those, wooden things propping up the front of the stage, right?
And everything's
That-
hollow.
Everything's hollow. And this is what I'm saying to you. First of all, there's some things we absolutely know about Trump and can be used to our advantage. One of those things is he only likes fast and hard.
Yes.
Okay? Sustainable military action? Not going to happen. If you know that, you can defeat him. Okay? I want to point out something, don't get caught up by the kineticness of the American foreign policy stage. Do not get caught up in it. The reason Israel, the US, France, UK, etc., are being so kinetic is because they know they're losing the pot. They really are losing the pot. First of all, international law, they've killed it. International law is gone. I mean, if there was even any question about it,
Can be found under the rubble of Gaza.
yeah. And the thing is, they can't even talk about rules-based order anymore. So rules-based order, as I've understood it for years, is basically it's Western rules, which means we can do anything we want and you cannot. You cannot retaliate. You cannot act. All right? Yes. So even the rules-based order is gone because, the global media was fooled into thinking that it meant law. Rules-based order is gone. Free trade was killed by Trump's tariffs, okay? Everyone now is clamping down on their resources. When I say everyone, I mean countries like China, others in the African continent, et cetera, are trying to, wrap their resources in some kind of sovereignty, right? Whether they can achieve that or not is another question, but that's a direction that we're seeing certainly in the global south. So rules-based order is dead. The free trade economy, like all the rules on economic trade, on global trade that the West was trying to pretend is the direction, that's dead, right?
That's why they bombed Yemen, remember?
Yeah, so that's law, that's economy, all right? U.S. economy, forget it. Nobody can afford anything, right? We had an article that was circulating online, and it was just by some guy, but it got such a strong reaction from like U.S. economic experts that it spawned a part 2, and everybody read this. And he basically said the poverty level in the U.S. is now at about $100 and maybe $34,000 a year income. Okay, not like $20,000 or $30,000.
Yes.
$130-something thousand is now the new poverty line in the U.S. Okay?
Because this is a process to calculate that hasn't been updated since 1963. Just
Correct. And all the indicators, GDP, stock market, those are not indicators of economic health. All right. So your international law is gone. Free trade is gone. Here's the thing. Does the U.S. have military might to do anything other than hard and fast? Okay, shock and awe. They did shock and awe this weekend.
Yes.
And what do they have? Do they have the Venezuelan oil? Do they have the Venezuelan silver? Did they stop the oil tanker heading to Venezuela today? Not that I heard of. There's an oil tanker heading to pick up oil from Venezuela today.
New York Times was reporting that a dozen tankers left Venezuelan ports in the last few hours, turning off their transponders.
Here's the thing. What did Trump win except a Hollywood scene that if you go behind the reel, you're going to find a lot of holes. But even the U.S. military, right? We all know from the over 2 years of war in Gaza that and the war in Ukraine, that Western arms suppliers are having a really hard time. They have a backlog. They cannot fulfill arms requests, right, and orders. And there's only X amount of major weapon systems, like defensive systems, that the U.S. can lend to its friends or utilize itself. Okay, it's a finite number, like a dozen or so, right?
They have like 50 HIMARS.
Yeah, exactly. There's a total limit. All the U.S. can do is shock in law because it's broken international law and created a sense that this is now customary for the U.S. to do, right? It has no economy, and its tariff policy made everyone start to want to protect their own resources. It backfired. And Trump has also realized that manufacturing is not coming back to the U.S. because of tariffs. The U.S. simply doesn't know how to manufacture. It doesn't have the processes. It doesn't have the infrastructure.
It doesn't have the people, the knowledge.
It doesn't have the people, which, by the way, is a reason to take over Latin America, because it can't do China. It potentially can't even do India and Vietnam and these places because there are more and more obstacles being coming into effect because of Trump's tariffs and his very aggressive attitude to the world. And this is why another reason, it's not just resources in Latin America, not just because it's in America, the US's backyard, but it's because of cheap labor. But those countries do not also have the infrastructure for the kind of sophisticated manufacturing that the world needs and expects right now. So what I'm saying to you is no law, okay, rogue nation, free trade killed, okay, massive economic pain in the US, and limited military capabilities except shock and awe. I would argue that an operation to what is it called again? Beheadings? Decapitation operations must be a lot easier than taking over a country. Okay?
Yes.
It's one guy with people waiting, a window of opportunity, boom, boom, all right? Must be a lot easier than actually what the US used to do in countries. I'm not that impressed by this. But here's the thing. The one thing the US economy has, the only singular thing the US economy has, is the US dollar. And that is being frayed. And that is why Trump has gone after the BRICS. This is why almost anything is going on. As long as the US dollar stays as the reserve currency, okay, propped up by natural resources that the Americans steal from other countries, like Venezuela, potentially like Greenland, very potentially like Canada. Be careful there, Esteban, because having these resources props up the dollar, all right? Yes. But because of the US aggression, a lot of countries may just choose to try to deviate away from the dollar, right? If the dollar collapses, there is no money. There is, right? The US prints bullshit money on paper, right? That it just prints it.
Backed up by nothing, exactly.
Backed up by nothing except this idea, because the US is still the reserve currency. The US currency is not used by 50% of trade going on globally. It collapses. That means you can't pay your army, you can't pay your contractors, you can't pay, payrolls, right, for the gazillions of people the US government employs. Forget the budget. You not only can't break the budget by trillions of dollars every year, you actually have to balance your budget. What gets cut? Not the military industrial complex, everyone else, food on the table of the average American. The one thing the US has right now is the US dollar. And that will come to an end. Yeah. So I don't buy that anything fantabulous happened in Venezuela now. And I don't agree that nobody's done anything. So I understand that. Don't forget, this happened very recently. There's shell shock. Countries will react. There is no question about it. Countries will react to different degrees, but they'll all count towards undermining the US dollar in the end. And that's the biggest danger.
That's exactly what I said. And in the short term, United States won big time, Charmaine. They undermined Russia, they undermined the BRICS, they didn't care about China.
How did they undermine Russia? How did they undermine
They
BRICS?
have, what I will say is they have undermined the idea of multipolarism. because Nicolas Maduro,
No.
he was supposed to be a big part of the BRICS. The Venezuela was supposed to be a big part of the BRICS, and it was thanks to Brazil that it didn't happen.
Venezuela wasn't a member of the BRICS.
Exactly, was supposed to be.
And the
Was
BRICS don't
supposed to
have
be.
defense pacts with each other. This is people are extrapolating BRICS, SCO, whatever. That means there's like an Asian NATO or a global South NATO. It's not the case. It's not how it's going to work. The strongest tool in the hands of the BRICS and the various global multipolar organizations and regional, sort of loose alliances, the biggest power they have is the currency they trade in. And Trump coming with the tariff punishment against the whole world has made people understand that they cannot rely on the US dollar as much. I don't think he has any rhyme or reason for doing things in the order he is. He's just doing Hollywood without understanding the repercussions, and then understanding the repercussions only in a very hollow beltway bubble.
I think the real issue here, like what at the heart of all of this, is the lack of surprise, the lack of shock that we have seen. I mean, Charmaine, you're saying, oh, like these actors haven't really, reacted because they're still in shock. I actually, feel like there's a collective lack of shock at what happened, at the weight of these events, and this is something that we have seen develop since the genocide in Gaza, in which for more than 2 years now, nations have just kind of sit on their hands and just put out statement after statement of condemnation and concern. So if after Venezuela they come for Colombia, who's going to stop them? If after Colombia they come for Brazil, who's going to stop them? Brazil, a founding member of the BRICS. Is that going to activate some sort of a defense pact that, as you will say, doesn't really exist? So maybe it should exist. Because if we're talking about multipolarism and we're talking about building, a new world, so to speak, it needs to be based on some kind
And
of
also,
rules.
unfortunately, I want also to add something on what he said. And for instance, if I'm a country, I'm against the United States, or I don't want to be a follower of the United States. Well, after what happened, I also don't want anymore Russia or China to be my ally because they do nothing. Why should I fight the United States alone? So I will knee and I will tell the United States, okay, I'm with you, don't do anything to me. That's the mentality of the world currently, Sharmeen. Yani, for instance, Iran paid billions and they sacrificed 14 years in Syria, and in one day everything was gone. Russia, they have S-300, they have Sukhoi airplanes. They did many things to Venezuela, and one day everything was gone.
What's gone in Venezuela? What's gone in Syria? You guys, you'll just listen. I understand why everyone's reactive.
I will tell you what's.
No, I just want to say.
Okay,
go ahead.
Now in Syria, if you are an Iranian, you can't go to Syria, you will be killed. That's what's gone, Sharmeen, after 14 years of sacrifice. Yesterday, before I slept, Russia, what the foreign ministry said, we advise all Russians to leave Venezuela immediately. That's what happened, Sharmeen.
Guys, I just want to say, like, you have to understand one thing and one thing only on the side that you think should drop everything and go fight wars that America, as it picks off countries around the world with shock and awe, and then countries, civilizational states like Russia, China, and Iran should drop what they have in their laps, meaning, which is
I don't think
essential,
either one of us is saying that, though, Sharmeen. I just want to point that
but
out.
the world expects a reaction from the new multipolar world, but the multipolar world is not yet defined. What I'm saying to you is there's only one thing the rest of the world, okay, the countries that are really distressed by U.S. aggressions, all right, there's only one thing they need to do is stop trading in the dollar. Yeah. And I'm just saying there's 190 other countries, and if 50% of them started doing that, then the U.S. couldn't do anything anymore. It would have lost. I'm just saying there's only one leg the U.S. stands on today. It has nothing else, all right? And the thing is that you'll have to understand is when I keep saying civilizational states, this means something. This means centuries and centuries and millennia of history. They don't move quickly. They move strategically. They move within their means, okay? They move within their capabilities. And everything the U.S. does brings them closer and opens up new doors and new capitals for them to penetrate. It's, you know, it's kind of like the Americans or the I know you don't like that term for the U.S. What
The
can we
people
call
of the
them?
U.S.
The Merkins, okay, the Merkins. Let's do that. The Merkins, you know, everything's like speed and show and whatever, right? So like they're doing the
Fireworks.
100-meter dash. And then you have the rising multipolar world. They're doing laps. Okay, how long can the sprinter last with the lappers?
But I mean, I feel like the real question here is not how long can they last, how much damage can they do. I think that's what concerns most people around the world, you know, and especially now in Latin America. You have, for the first time in nearly 4 decades, US bombs dropping in a Latin American capital, about 80 people killed. The same bombs that are killing Palestinian children in Gaza have just killed a bunch of Venezuelan civilians because this was an indiscriminate attack. So I think the message here it's very strong. You know, obviously from the U.S., I think we already covered it, but the fact that you know, I don't think anybody's really asking. You know, like, oh, China and Russia need to like you know, mount an army and sail to the Caribbean. That would be absurd. But there's other options. You know, like more than condemnations. I mean, you can close down embassies. You can, you know, expel diplomats. You can
What's that?
call
What's that?
for their expulsion from the UN. Why is, you know, Israel still a member of the UN? Why is the US still a member of the UN?
I mean, they're not going to do that. I mean, I can just tell you, they're not going to do that. I
know.
think, like, what I do agree with is countries should shut down embassies with Israel because Israel is like a piddling little state, right? It shouldn't with the U.S. because channels for dialogue should exist and continue to exist. But
Why?
there's
Why
nothing
would
to be
this-
discussed with Israel. There's nothing to be discussed with it. It's just, you know. But I don't think that would do anything. If you cut off channel, you increase the chances of confrontation. I think.
Are you sure about that? Because what's stopping them now? What exactly is stopping them?
How do you think the U.S. is going to be punished if you shut down their embassy? How do you think
It's
they're
not
gonna be
about
punished?
punishing the US. It's about sending a message.
Yeah, I don't think that's a strong enough message. Like I said, you have the entire world controls the one thing that the U.S. is most vulnerable to, and that is the position of the U.S. dollar. That's the only theater you need to engage in now. You have to understand that. You know, Jeffrey Sachs, an economist, is now talking at the UN Security Council. I want to tune in to see what he's saying. I want to talk about the economists, geo-economists. They're talking about the dollar. They're talking about resources. They're talking about finite things that the U.S. cannot control. The U.S. is freaking out. What happened to silver markets the last few days from January 1st? China cut off
But the
selling
point
its
is
silver.
that now the United States can go to a country that has a lot of silver and make a coup and take the silver.
Well,
This is-
apparently that's what those Russian and Chinese and Iranian ships were doing right before the Maduro kidnapping
Well,
was taking out Venezuelan silver. We don't know
you-
yet, but
But we also don't know, Sharmeen, that if I own a tanker and this happened, I will tell my fleet, go out of Venezuela. It's dangerous. We don't know. Maybe they are empty, Sharmeen. We are assuming things that we're not sure about.
No.
That's one. Second, I told you from the beginning, and when I started, I said that in the short term, the United States won big time. Maybe after 20 years or after like 15 years, they will suffer of what they did because, as you mentioned, people will try to not to attach themselves to the economy of the United States so they can maneuver.
how 10 or 15 years? Why are you not thinking in terms of 2026?
Because there's no alternative. This is the same topic that we always talk. There's no alternative, Sharmeen. Now
There's
I
no
am
alternative to what?
to the Western hegemony in economy, in banks, in microtransactions, and in and online payments.
Everyone is transacting differently. And the reason they're doing that is because there are other platforms. Entire continents
But
or
they are-
regions are transacting among themselves
They are not
in
well
their own
established.
currencies. No, it doesn't.
Yani, for instance,
so
Sharmeen,
this is the kind of thing that quickly advances the
don't think
compliance
so.
with these systems.
I
These are
hope
the
so.
kind of events Well, it's not hope or not. It's what has to happen.
No, it's not happening.
Nobody wants to be. There's massive talk about just divesting of bonds right now, of government secured bonds. Nobody has. You have to have a currency. You have to have some belief in it.
Okay, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about in the current days, for instance. You mentioned, for instance, United States, they have no manufacturing and blah, blah, blah. You're 100% correct. But I don't think even that the United States need manufacturing. We live in a world now, currently AI. Most of the online websites, AI websites that we pay for, including ChatGPT, they are Americans, for instance. There's no alternative. If I want to play a game, whether it's on PlayStation, for instance, on my Mac or my PC, I will pay through an American company because everything is American.
Michael Burry, the guy from The Big Short, just divested from like the major AI stocks. And people are talking about the AI bubble bursting. I think we're going to see that this year. All these things you say with such certainty, or maybe not, maybe I'm just assuming that. All I'm saying to you, every one of these actions, for every action, there is an opposite reaction.
I am with you.
If you think...
I'm just answering why you asked me why you said 15 years. That's what I am saying.
It's not 15. Now, everything's happening at the speed of light.
But since the AI, we are in the 4th year of AI, till now, the companies that control AI in the world, they are Americans. The subscriptions, they are Americans. Unfortunately, we should have an alternative from different countries. Okay, make us commercials, show us their products, and I will subscribe. But there's no such thing.
The Americans are ahead in this area. I don't know why you're focused on this. I'm saying
because most of the money in the world is circulating through micro transactions, not through big transactions. Now, you will see billions of dollars circulating in a game that one never heard of. There's billions of dollars.
That's not economy. That's not economy.
That's
no,
economy.
It's not economy.
Wallah.
21st century economy.
Wallah, it's economy.
No, it isn't. It's a bubble. It's a part of the economy that is lucrative right now. But I'm saying it looks like the ground is going to collapse from under it because it's all overhyped, all right? I remember that with the dot-com bubble because I was around and I had a dot-com company. It was overhyped, but even the good ones didn't necessarily succeed in that environment when it crashed. Please, here's the thing. The thing about what's happening now is disruption. The 21st century has been all about disruption because the Western hegemons understood that the foundations of their hegemony had massive cracks in them. And by trying to, prop up the hegemony, they were doing all kinds of things differently. Right? Their economies were hemorrhaging, right? They couldn't invade and occupy anymore. They now had to shock and awe and withdraw, right? They worked through proxies, they worked through destabilization programs, sabotage, etc., which, can bring us to Iran if y'all want or not. I don't think that, let's say Venezuela is like flicked off the map of non-aligned nations for a moment. Let's say they take all their resources, etc. Then what? Do you know how much American manpower and dollars it will take for the Americans to run Venezuela and not get shot, not get sniped, not get attacked, not get bombed? Here's the analogy. You know that story about putting the finger in a dike, right? A dam. Yeah. Where there's a leak, you put in a finger, but water will always find the next easiest way out. Then you put in the other finger, and then suddenly 2 more cracks, and you've got like 4 fingers in, all right? The U.S. does not have enough fingers to plug the dike. It doesn't. And if it kind of does, as long as the U.S. dollar, this imaginary monopoly money can be paying for all kinds of things. But the moment the US dollar doesn't have value, it's game over. So why does anyone have to react to this? Just move away from the dollar? do it as quietly as possible, and watch things sink. That's my view.
And give us alternatives. Yeah.
And hit that like button as well. Hit that like button.
Use your last dollars, please, to become a patron at the Cradle, because who the F is going to bring you this kind of discourse?
Of exactly of breakdown. Do you guys want to hear what they've been saying at the UN? I have a few quotes here from China, from the
of
US.
course.
Nothing shocking, nothing
Okay.
worth breaking here. Mike Waltz spoke. He said that this was a law enforcement operation. Okay, they're stressing that there is no war against Venezuela and its people. You know, we just bombed you. There's no war against you. Okay, then China said they are deeply shocked and strongly condemns what they called the United States unilateral, illegal, and bullying acts against Venezuela. They accuse the U.S. of wantonly trampling upon Venezuelan sovereignty, security, and legitimate rights and interests. Russia said that he called on Nebensia, the Russian envoy to the UN, called on the council members to abandon double standards and not justify such an egregious act of aggression out of fear of the American global gendarme. Warning that the United States seeks control over Venezuela's natural resources, he says its actions are generating fresh momentum for neocolonialism and imperialism. I mean, yeah. A lot of concern coming out of the Security Council. I don't expect really anything to happen. You know, I mean, the genocide in Gaza. How many times did they take it to the Security Council, and it just kind of nothing happened, right? So
They didn't even say that the United States should release Maduro immediately.
exactly. Why? Where's the call to free the abducted, the kidnapped president and his wife? Let's not forget about his wife,
Yeah,
Celia
his wife,
Flores,
100%.
who was also kidnapped. I mean, they killed 32
Wow,
Cuban
wow.
nationals, you know, and this is the last thing I want to say on the topic, because I do think we need to move to the situation in Iran. But like U.S. media was describing the killing of Maduro's security detail as self-defense. You know, these people are screwed in the brain. This is so bad. But in any case, what we are seeing is not just, you know, the empire running amok in its so-called backyard. We're also seeing yet another attempt at igniting the streets in Iran, where for the past several days there have been popular protests turned into violent riots, as has happened before. We have seen this many times already. And just yesterday, Donald Trump was saying that if Iran keeps killing protesters, they are going to have to come in hard and save the Iranians, like they are trying to save the Venezuelans with those bombs just filled with democracy and freedoms.
And the Nigerians and the Somalians and the blah blah blah. You know, like I said, I mean, I don't know. There was a lot of yesterday on social media. You saw a lot of information, tweets by Israeli officials, and the Israeli media noting that something was afoot, and it looked like it was war with Iran. That the security cabinet meeting held in the Zionist state yesterday, the 5-hour meeting, had come up with Operation Iron Strike, I think, not alluding to
Yes.
which country
Operation
or
Iron Strike, yes.
which set of adversaries were a target. And then you had, was it Bennett, the Israeli minister of whatever?
No,
who
Bennett is
had-
the opposition.
Not Bennett. What was it?
Yeah, but he was the prime minister of Israel before Netanyahu.
Okay, I can't remember who it was. It was the bald guy
Bennett.
who basically had an hourglass.
She
you know,
doesn't
took a
believe me,
video of
even
him.
if I say facts. Okay.
No, I don't remember who it was. I just remember it's the bald guy. That, you know, he took a video of himself with an hourglass, he flipped it, and then got up from the table and left, right? And then everyone's like, oh my God, he's saying the time is, you know, the time is near. And he's, you know, Israel's going to bomb something, and they've had this security cabinet meeting, and there's an operation name, Iron Strike, and it's got to be Iran, and the U.S. is, and then everybody had, you know, lots of social media posters had, like, you know, those maps of like air traffic, right? The amount of X kind of flights from the US or from Europe moving. These were the same patterns we saw before Israel's 12-day war, you know, against Iran, etc. I mean, yes, they could attack Iran, or it could be a psyop. You know, Trump loves those. He loves to surprise people. Let's be honest. I have no idea if they're going to attack Iran or not. Certainly, they make it sound like Iran's their target because, well, Netanyahu wants it, and his language leading up to his meeting with Donald Trump just a few days ago was about Iran, or at least the Israeli media hinted that it was. Of course, the so-called riots or protests in Iran happened around the same time. Everything was just, it was like perfectly orchestrated. What I can say, and we have
I'm sorry, because the same guy that you're talking about, Banat, he also put a statement saying that we are with Iran and Iran should rise and blah, blah, blah. And the same day the protest started.
Yeah, so the protests started on December 28th. We have an article, a feature, an analysis on this by a correspondent of ours from Iran, Ferechte Sadeghi, and she's basically describing what's happened in Iran, why it's happened, and what looks to be the solution or what looks to be the outcome. The Iranian currency has been falling significantly. I think it's hit an all-time high, and it dropped by almost 50% within the last 6 months. So
it's the lowest in the world currently.
So basically, this has sparked anger. People who, because obviously salaries haven't adjusted with that speed, right? And the inflation is massive, and so shopkeepers are protesting. And I think they started, as Ferechte mentions, at 2 cell phone shopping malls in downtown Tehran. They started a strike saying that they couldn't do business because there's a new cell phone registry tariff with the government imposed on devices priced at $600 and more. And it was that kind of microeconomic deal, kind of like how protests kicked off in Lebanon in 2019 because the government...
Over 10 cents or 19 cents.
Yeah.
Like the WhatsApp tax, right?
Yeah, the WhatsApp protest.
WhatsApp use tax, okay? Because, of course, nobody was using the telephones anymore. They were using WhatsApp to communicate with everyone, even domestically. So shopkeepers the next day, so on the 29th, they didn't... They went to like a major avenue, all right, and into the Grand Bazaar of Tehran, which is like, viewed as the beating heart of commerce domestically, right? Certainly in the capital city. And then it sounded like everyone in the Grand Bazaar, all the shopkeepers shut down their stores, whereas in fact, it's exactly like what I saw in Syria in the early days, okay, 2011, 2012, in areas where opposition gunmen wanted things to look like everybody was striking against the Assad government. You could be killed, or your store could be broken into. They would just break all your wares and your glass. And so for protection, a lot of storekeepers in Syria would bring down their sort of iron gate, etc. And this happened in Tehran too. And then shortly after, you saw very specific small groups of rioters, people with weapons, people whose intent was, sabotage and the destruction of private property. And this has happened so systematically over any kind of protest movement in Iran. And because of the 12-day war, in June this year, Iranians have become hypersensitive about this kind of penetration by foreign forces or foreign-backed forces, meaning Iranians who are paid off or incited by foreign elements and adversaries. The exchange rate is also a big problem. They've switched, here's another thing, and this is a big core of the problem, is that in order to circumvent U.S. sanctions, Iran's Ministry of Petroleum uses a shadow network to sell oil on its behalf, and through individuals or entities that Iran calls trustees. These people, we don't know who they are. We don't know which countries are involved. People have been talking about this recently. They've suggested, Singapore, the UAE, potential other countries where, that could act as trustees. But I don't know that an entire state would take this on. I think there's individuals and entities within states. And so suddenly Iran has not been able to get back the enormous amount of money, I'm talking billions of dollars, that are in the hands of these trustees. So a transaction was made, the trustee has the money and has not been released to Iran. Some have just potentially run off with it. It's a risky process, not going through ordinary channels. And there's a lot of basic issues with the central bank, how the government itself is handling the lack of money. So Iran balances its budget more or less, but the money it's expected in has not equaled the money it's calculated, right? Because some trustees have not released the funds. This has created an economic problem of its own. The main issue here, though, is why the Israelis and the Americans are talking, Trump's talking about going in and saving Iranians, when Iranians themselves are saying, look, there aren't these many protests. What's being reported on social media isn't true. There's a lot of false information, fake videos, the same thing we've seen over and over again. And, I think Haaretz or some Israeli media yesterday said, yes, there's restiveness in Iran right now. And of course, a lot of this happens also in the western region of Iran, which is on the border with, where you have Azerbaijan and stuff beyond
the
that,
Caspian
where you have
Sea,
that
yeah.
influence, from the Caspian Sea, and then you have Iraqi Kurds on Iran's western border, and these have been avenues in which Iran has discovered arms caches coming over these borders. And this is the area in which the Israelis, in the large part, operated during the 12-day war, okay, because Iran has great geographic depth. But this is a vulnerability for Iran. So there have been a lot of crackdowns, and we've seen some of them. And I think that, like I said, this Israeli commentator was saying, look, there's restiveness, but nothing that the government can't handle that we can see yet. And I think that's the general consensus. So, if Israel's planning an operation against Iran, it would have to be something a little bit new, something a little bit different. I think they're always going to try to go for Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, but, hopefully, here's
They were
the
saying
thing.
he's doing Russia now, like to escape, right? To
Well,
flee.
Yes. Well, that's always, they always say that. Everyone's running to Russia to escape, whatever. It's never, ever true. But there's also, don't
Bashar
forget
did it.
the no, this was after. This is when they
Bashar
weren't
can be
saying
found
it.
in Russia.
When they weren't saying it, he did leave. But, don't forget, like, they attacked Putin's residence, the Russian president's residence in these last few days. See the kineticness? It's supposed to give a sense of absolute impotence and vulnerability and
But also
fear.
it's a sign of desperation, right?
It is a sign of desperation. You think the Russians don't know who's cooking up these kind of acts? You think the Russians think it's Zelensky sitting in his hockey-colored bunker? No, it's UK intelligence, it's US intelligence, it's Israelis. It's the same playbook. And they think decapitation is the way to go, but what they don't understand is these civilizational states are based on institutions, no longer, dictators. They're just not. I know that's their lingo, but these are institutions. Their militaries are not so easy. Take out Putin and you will get an actual hardliner in. What do they say about be careful what you wish for? Take out Khamenei and you don't know what's coming.
I think two things actually I want to mention. Just one is Karim. There's a video on our chat that shows the violence of the protesters in Iran. It was worked on by our social media team. I think it's worth taking a look at. The second thing to your point, Karim, Charmin, I'm sorry, about a hardliner. Just to very briefly go back to Venezuela. The president, the current, the vice president who has taken charge, Delcy Rodriguez, if anything, she's more of a hardliner than Nicolas Maduro. She's more of a believer in the, in the revolutionary process of Venezuela. Her and her brother, I mean, their parents were killed her dad was killed by a CIA death squad. So it's like the devil do you know versus the devil you think you know, I guess, because you
That's
might
what I'm
get
saying.
shocked.
It's all Hollywood. What's actually changed in Venezuela? Maduro's gone, and Trump didn't like him because he would dance and mock me when, as the New York Times wrote about this. The trigger for Trump was Maduro's little dance. Okay, that mocked him. We can put up that. I don't know if we have that screenshot, but this is the thing. It's stupid. It's childish. They did an operation, and then y'all are worried that nobody's going to react. It is literally whittling down any credibility the U.S. has, any legitimacy the U.S. has, and people will get more and more afraid to do business and politics with the United States. So I don't see this as a win. I mean, for sure, it felt like a punch in the face, right, this weekend. But when you get a moment to reflect, and we're only in the early stages of reflection, I think the conclusion is going to be something quite different. Because, yeah.
No, go ahead. It's a good point. But no, what I want to say is like what you're seeing on the screen, of course, is the violence that has been unleashed in Iran recently. And I think, it's very important what you highlighted, Charmin, that is like people are fed up with this, like they have seen this so many times already. And it does feel at this moment in time like a bit of a last ditch effort, right, to activate the streets. And there's this sense of an imminent attack. I mean, yesterday I was seeing the flight tracking data, the websites talking about how there's a lot of weapon shipments that have recently arrived in Israel from the UK in particular, US cargo planes that have stopped in the UK and then made their way towards Israel. So, Karim, what do you think? What do you think about the situation in Iran on the street? What do you think about the reaction from the government as well? Which is very interesting. What Ali Khamenei and other ministers and government officials have said is the protests are rightful. They have a right to be protesting. They have not said, there's nothing to protest about. If anything, they've said there's actually plenty to protest about. But there's a difference between protesting and rioting. So what do you make of all of this?
Well, today I came across a tweet that for me it sums up my idea, and I just want to read it. It's from Professor David Miller. He said the state must use force both against the Mossad-sponsored rioters and against the Mossad itself, everywhere it exists. The days of inviting the war to West Asia must end. It is not just a question of the Islamic Republic's existence, but the existence of sovereign societies and people everywhere. It's not only about Iran, because we saw what they did in other countries also. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the front line of the struggle for civilization. If you don't understand that currently, I don't know when anyone will. So this is what's happening by targeting Iran. They are not only targeting Iran, they are targeting the resistance against the Israeli occupation. They are targeting the countries that are standing against the hegemony of the United States.
That resist imperialism, yes.
Yeah, 100%. And we know Iran used to support, or is still supporting Venezuela. And it supported the actors of resistance and paid billions of dollars, and also they suffered sanctions because of that, and they are still supporting. So if Iran got weakened, or God forbid something happened in Iran, many ideologies, I think, in the world will shatter with Iran, which one of them is the resistance in our region against the Israeli occupation, and the other one is resisting the American hegemony. I
Karim,
think, yes.
Do you think that Iran's going to wait again? Or do you think they're going to be a bit more proactive this time around? Because, just a few days ago, the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, was writing a little op-ed in The Guardian, again, talking about the need for diplomatic routes and all of that nice little words that they like to use. Has Iran learned this lesson?
Yani, you want my hopes or my actual answer?
Give us your actual answer. Give us your actual
answer. I don't think so, because look, the first action that Iran should take is to acquire or build a nuclear weapon to deter the Americans. acquire it from a country, pay for it, manufacture it, whatever they do in nuclear, they should do it, because the only thing that we know that the West will not touch is a nuclear country. That's the lesson that we learned. North Korea is very small, and Russia is very big. Both are deterred because of one bomb, or they deterred the United States because they have the bomb. That's what the West taught us, and the geopolitical stance of the West taught us. If a country has a nuclear, they might sanction it, they might try to weaken it, but they will not bomb it or hijack its president or its government. So that's my opinion, what Iran should do. Many people will disagree, or maybe they will say that it's illogical, but for me, that's what I see. The only way to deter the United States and the West currently is acquiring nuclear military capability, not nuclear technology.
I don't think Iran will do a preemptive strike. I don't think it's in their DNA. They've been so, like much of the resistance axis, so well trained by, in their responses to what's happening in the West, that they always want to be on the right side of the law. It really pisses me off. However, that being said, there's no reason that if Iran starts to see movements suggesting an imminent attack from Israel or the United States, that Iran will not launch a different kind of attack simultaneously. Could be a widespread cyber attack. This is something that Iran is building up.
The Handala
for.
hackers, right?
The Handala hackers, but there was talk about, I think just yesterday, that I don't know if it was power outage or something significant in Israel, but it wasn't like, as was being reported on social media, that it was a like countrywide thing. But this is something that we could anticipate. I also think that if Israel did attack Iran, and it was clear that it was Israel, Iran will have a different set of reactions than the last one. I don't think they will start with the de-escalatory sort of strikes, in the sense that you strike an adversary to let them know you can strike them, to make your adversary think twice about striking back or escalating the conflict, right? This is very much the MO of the axis of resistance, all right? Only hitting the enemy to show we can reach you here, think again, be smart, let's not escalate. I think the Axis, and I think Iran, after the 12-day war, understood that you're dealing with some kind of demon beast. There's no logic with it, and they want to kill everybody in Iran. They don't care if everyone dies. Possibly Iran even, was careful in its responses to Tel Aviv because of concerns and whisper campaigns that Israel could use a nuclear weapon. I don't think that needs to be something that Iran needs to consider, because Israel will be over if it uses a nuclear weapon on Iran. I mean, for sure. Well, no, yeah, that too. But no, because Iran, if you have ballistic missiles of the kind that Iran has, and your adversary has zero geographic depth and only has X power stations, X oil refineries, X electrical, whatever, for the country's electricity, X desalination plants. Yeah, it's easy peasy. In a few hours, it's all gone. All right, so that would be the result of an Israeli
But
nuke.
also there will be the argument, Sharmeen, they had troop promise 1, 2, 3, and they didn't attack these facilities.
Because civilizational states move, not in the way we sort of, this generation moves, which is very fast, very fast, very fast, TikTok scrolling. It just moves differently. I can't change that. What I'm saying is one of the weapons they have and they are implementing. This is why the Americans are panicking so much. They are slowly moving away global trade from the US dollar. That's the nuclear weapon that they have. Okay? So, I don't know where we were. So the Americans, will there be an Israeli strike on Iran? I don't know. Will the Iranians retaliate? For sure. How will this play out? Nobody knows. Really, really, what we'll have to do if something like this happens is get on, get on and do a live thing every single day for you guys with information we're getting on the ground, with analysis that we're making, and anyone we're speaking to in Iran or elsewhere. There's no telling right now. Let's be honest. This is because part of it is because this is the Trump way. Somebody asked in the Ron 841000 asks, does Charmine now think Trump is quote unquote transactional as opposed to a scumbag fascist? He may be both, but yeah, I do think he's transactional. And the reason is, first of all, he's about ego, and then he wants to be a winner, right? It's all tied to ego. So he does things that make him look big and scary and great and give him leverage. And then if he fails, as he often does, he's failed in his lawsuits and then comes scurrying back with a settlement. He's failed in things that they've done. He's done politically in the year that he's been in office. And then, there's a solution like going hard on tariffs against China and then, taxing China less than it does India. He's transactional, but if he hits an adversary that stands firm, he comes scurrying back to the negotiating table for an out. All right. So I do think that is an important information for us to consider. On the other hand, we've also learned something else about Trump. Trump uses a lot of distractions and then does something you don't expect. How do you want us here at the Cradle to decipher his next move? Greenland for sure, but he has 3 more years. Let's see how things go. Let's see how bad the dollar collapse is.
Year
then
2
it's
hasn't
a
even
resource grab.
started. Year 2 hasn't even started. Yeah, this is insane.
Sorry,
This is
I was reading, Esteban shared with me what
Guterres said.
yeah, 100%. In situations as confused and complex as the one we now face in Venezuela, it's
so
important to
confusing.
stick to principles.
Confusing. It's so
Respect
confusing, my God.
for the UN.
Guys,
Oh my God.
let me.
I will not even put it, yani.
No. Let me give you just an update about the situation with Maduro. Him and his wife, First Lady Celia Flores, have appeared for the first time in a New York courtroom. Apparently, this is just coming in. He will be represented by Washington-based attorney Barry Pollack, who previously represented WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in the plea deal that led to his release. Celia Flores is going to be represented by Texas attorney.
Oh, they
Mark
got rid of the
Donnelly.
Zionist judge? Oh, no, sorry. This
Represented
is not
the lawyer.
judge. Okay.
The lawyer.
Yeah,
These
but
are
what's
going to
the
be
point?
the
The
lawyers.
Zionist judge is who
Presiding.
who just buried everything in the 9/11 cases is going to be sitting there. Ugh, it's so gross. But I can count at least this time 4 the conservative right-wing influencers to be just brutal with a Zionist judge sitting at the helm.
Yeah. Someone asked, where's the great Zionist Mandani at this point?
Well,
Where is-
Mamdani's reversing all the limits on being
Yeah,
able
yeah.
to speak out. This is important. I'm sorry, that is important. Do it in New York.
No,
March
he
to
said
the
he's
UN.
against what happened.
No, I'm
Yeah.
talking about the freedom of
What is
speech
he
that was
actually doing, you
curtailed
mean?
under Eric whatever, Eric White Guy, is basically been reversed in Mamdani's first few days. So in terms of if you join boycotting of Israel, you can't be punished for it. A lot of things like that.
If okay, I think maybe we can jump very quickly and just update people a bit on what's been happening also in Yemen. The reports of these attempts to create, what is that they're calling it, Arabia of the South, the state of the Arabian South. That's what they want to create now, apparently, in southern Yemen. And we have heard that Saudi forces have essentially retaken almost everything that was taken by the UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council. And the Southern Transitional Council said this weekend, that they are ready to call for a referendum of independence to create the so-called state of the Arabian South. Karim, what have you heard? What do you know? And what do you think about the movements in Yemen?
Yeah, the Yemen is still very complicated. I know that in the news it appears as if everything stopped, but we have to know that there's people in Yemen that do believe that there should be 2 countries, and it's an ideology there. And they were 2 separate countries from 1967 till 1990, and they came into one country through a civil war. It was not like an actual agreement. And my viewing of the situation, we know that many people are saying that STC is withdrawing and
The
and they are-
UAE-backed
the-
STC.
Yeah, the UAE-backed STC, but according to my information and to my analysis of what's happening in Yemen and what happened in Yemen previously also, the STC that are backed by the UAE are the most powerful in Yemen. If we want to compare them to the forces that are backed by the Saudi Arabians, Saudi Arabia and it's very powerful in politics in the region. Of course, they enforced many things to stop the actual advancements of STC that are backed by the UAE. But actually, if the other side want to recapture a city, according to my understanding in Yemen, they can do it within at least 1 week. So everything now in Yemen has stopped, but the solution has not been implemented. Yesterday, Saudi Arabia bombed Sada, bombed Ansar Allah areas, and they injured civilians. And also there were clashes on checkpoints outside the areas of Ansar Allah, which also tells us there's also problems still between the transitional council that's backed by the Saudis and STC, the government that's backed by Saudi Arabia, and the army groups that are backed by UAE. I think it's far from a solution now. Because there's many things involved. You have oil, you have gas, you have routes, you have influential cities
Very important,
that are
yes.
captured. Yeah, they want to share the same capital, which is very important. The Saudi imposed government, the head of the government is in Aden, in Aden, and the STC, they want to make a country, and they want the capital of the country in Aden, which also will make conflict. There is no permanent solution. And Ansar Allah now, they are not acting. They are waiting to see what will happen. So in the media, everything has stopped. And also, both sides, head of the STC and head of the military wing of STC and the government of Yemen that is recognized in the UN, and it's an international actor unlike Ansar Allah, they all went to Saudi Arabia. And following that, also Saudi Arabia had meetings with different Arab countries, including Egypt, and they made this statement that we agree with Saudi Arabia, and as if nothing happened. But I doubt that. I think very fast we will see more clashes, unfortunately, because the agreement happened in Hadramaut. It's the biggest province in Yemen, but it's not the only province in Yemen. There's many stuck situation, and especially in Socotra, because Socotra, for instance, is fully with the UAE. And they don't want Saudi Arabia, and there were protests yesterday.
What do you mean Socotra is with the UAE? There's a few hundred people there. The UAE has only put their people there. It's not you mean in control. Socotra is controlled by the UAE.
No, there's people, there's Yemenis, there's thousands of Yemenis that live in Socotra. And Socotra is very important geographically and historically, and also if you want to talk nature, it's very, very important, and it's very far from the borders. It's near, it's near to it's as far from Yemen and closer to Africa, but historically it's with Yemen. So if you want to make a solution and you have parts.
Can you put a map on that we did last week, just so viewers can also see what parts we're talking about?
Yeah, of course. So in short, I think currently the problem seems as if it's fixed. Fixed meaning that the UAE gangs will not fight with Saudi Arabia gangs in Yemen. But I'm not sure this will last, because the evidence on the ground tells me otherwise. Now I will put the map so people can maybe understand more what I was talking about.
Yeah, I think, we saw a couple things, right, in the lead up in December-ish, right? We saw the Trump make a ceasefire in Sudan, which we later learned was at the behest of the Saudis. The Saudis had called up their new buddy, the White House, and said, listen, we got to stop the advancements of the RSF, the UAE-backed butchers, basically.
Butchers, yes.
Yeah, in Sudan. And Trump he did a ceasefire, right? And then you suddenly had the UAE-backed STC, Southern Transitional Council in southern Yemen, making huge inroads and territorial grabs, strategic grabs in Yemen. And then you saw Israel recognize Somaliland. And I don't know why, Karim, I felt like that was the biggest trigger for the Saudis of them all. They were handling the other situations, right? But this Israeli recognition of Somaliland, and guys, if you look at the map, you'll see why, okay? Because obviously Somaliland is right across from...
Yeah, Somal is bigger than that, and it goes south. But what we are seeing in the map is part of the new Somaliland. And everything seen in the map is part of Somaliland.
Give
And I
us
will
the
put
bigger
another-
map. Give us, the bigger
Yeah.
map, so we can see exactly why these routes matter. And so when the Israelis recognized Somaliland, it was, I think there was a massive, not just Saudi reaction, but throughout the entire region. This was to be taken very seriously. First of all, it became immediately apparent that the aggression happening in this part of the world, sort of Horn of Africa to West Asia, right, the Arabian Gulf, was an Israeli-UAE project, okay, that went from Sudan to Somalia to Yemen and beyond. All right, the thing that's now happened, I mean, literally, it's just impossible to keep track of the meetings that are going on between the Saudis and between the Somalians and between the Sudanese and between the Egyptians and between the Turks and between the Pakistanis. I mean, you have foreign ministers and heads of state just talking nonstop with each other. And as Mohammed Swaidan, our columnist who was on our podcast last week, you should check that out because there's a really good explainer of what's happening between the UAE and Saudi Arabia. But essentially, what he said is like, prior to the Israeli recognition of Somaliland, you had three kind of accepted alliances in this region. You had the resistance axis, right, Iran and its allies. You had the moderate Arabs, the so-called moderate Arabs. Let's call them mostly Arab monarchies, except for Egypt. So the Saudis, Gulf countries, Jordan, and then Egypt. And then you had, which were good with the Americans and basically good with the Israelis. And then you had the Turkish-Qatari alliance, which many in the Gulf hated because they called it the Muslim Brotherhood Alliance, right? Like the countries that had driven the Arab Spring initially. And when the penny dropped that this UAE-Israeli alliance was a very aggressive land-grabbing, okay, and economy-grabbing alliance, which is when everyone knows why Israel recognized Somaliland, because of where it is strategically right across from Yemen, and just absolutely giving Israel and the UAE control from Djibouti all over to Somalia, right? Control over those waterways. It exploded. And the shuttle diplomacy we've seen in this region are unprecedented. Essentially, what happened is the three axes in the region, resistance, moderate monarchies, whatever, and the Muslim Brotherhood Alliance, all turned their attention against the Emirati-Israeli alliance. And that's why I think the Emirati-Israeli alliance will get a real punch in the face. That this is not going to stop. And the reason being, okay, the reason being, which I explained last time, I'll explain again today. Can you put the big map on really quickly?
It was all the time. I will put it again.
Okay, well, All right, so here's the reason. That's not the map.
That's it.
No, the big map that you put on last time.
That's it.
No, it isn't.
While we
Okay,
figure
this
out
is
the
the-
map, make sure
No,
to
no,
hit
no,
that
no.
like button, everyone who's connected at this point.
It's even bigger than this. It shows the UAE as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now he knows which one it is. You know?
Yeah, you were talking. Yes, okay.
Yeah, hit that like button and subscribe to our Patreon, please. God, last time, I don't know what we said, but we got quite a few Patreons. We got really excited.
Oh my God, guys! This I have to read you this news. I'm sorry, I need to read you this.
Oh,
Morgan Ortegas, the deputy special U.S. envoy for the Middle East, has been put on administrative leave after it was discovered that she had a romantic relationship with Lebanese banker Antoun
Sahnaoui.
Segnahoui. In addition to the relationship, Segnahoui reportedly bought 2 luxury watches for Ortegas as Christmas gifts during a visit to New York City, totaling more than 55,000 USD in value. Ortegas made sure the receipts were in her name to avoid any sign of her inappropriate relationship with Segnahoui. Salt of the earth people, these U.S. officials. What else can you say about them?
seriously. We'll take a Rolex watch or two, too.
Exactly. And actually, since I got your attention for a second, Maduro has pled not guilty. He told the judge, I am a decent man, the president of my country. I was captured. So this is the latest from the Maduro hearing in New York.
Can you put up the map?
Yeah, first, I just want to thank Mavinil,
Mavinil.
maybe. Thank you, Mavinil. And this is the map that Sharimin is asking for.
No, it isn't. You have that up. I'm talking about the whole lot of it. Where
I
you
put
said-
it. I put it.
This
It's
one?
the
Okay, okay,
program.
okay.
It's the program.
Oh, my God.
Huh? See my hands. It's the program. Wallah.
All right, guys, here, pay attention. So, everybody's fight, this is why the cradle came to existence, because everything that was happening in our part of the world, and also much of the world, is because everyone's now running to grab the roots that are going to determine this century's new economic powers, okay? Everyone wants to be part of these routes. Their railroads, their ports, their transportation corridors by land. Now, here's the thing. You know, Arab Gulf countries are a little bit worried about, well, they're super worried about the Strait of Hormuz being blocked off. Iran has threatened it, right? It's not done it, but it's threatened it. And so they have an opportunity now that everyone's looking to build routes that circumvent the Strait of Hormuz. And so, as you can see by the map, you can see if you bring it up a little bit closer, the UAE is basically, Saudi Arabia is the biggest Arab littoral state on the Persian Gulf, all right? And huge geographic depth. You can see it's a massive, massive country. All right.
2.1 million.
Okay. And then you have these other, then Yemen, massive, and then UAE, and then the states, the Arab Gulf states get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Look at where the UAE is. It's basically Saudi Arabia's ass, all right? It has no land route. It has no land route to Europe and the Mediterranean other than through Saudi Arabia. If Saudis say no, it's no, right? The UAE has to use water routes to get up to what's that place called? Aqaba, whatever, you know, like to the Israelis, all right? In order, you know, to the Egyptians, they can't trust the Egyptians. The Saudis can buy them off. They have to get up these, you know, go around Yemen. That's why they need the ports, a string of ports around Yemen, right? In order to then get up that waterway to Israel and then cross over by land through Israel, because they're allies, to the Mediterranean, etc. This is why the UAE and Israel want Somaliland. They already have bases and boots on the ground in the waterway around Yemen. They already have it on, the UAE has the ports and the bases around Yemen's coastline. They already have boots on the ground and bases in Djibouti and not in Somalia, right? Turkey has a military alliance of sorts with Somalia.
They announced they're gonna do their first offshore drilling now, Turkey, in Somalia.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's stepping up the game. The 3 other axes are stepping up their game to defeat the Emirati-Israeli plan, which is so excellent. Like, really, when you think, oh, everything's humming along as usual, you know, our region delivers you a nice punch. So anyway, Somaliland will kind of like help the Emiratis be on both sides of this massive waterway, okay, securing it for the Israelis. They're not having it. The Muslim Brotherhood Alliance, Turkey, Qatar, the resistance axis, no way, no how, because that would bring Israeli troops potentially to the north of South Yemen on the border with North Yemen and Ansar Allah. Not going to happen, right? And of course, the moderate Arabs don't like it because Saudi Arabia wants to be the main route, the controller of the economy in the Persian Gulf, because it's always played that role, and insists now, like it chopped off Qatar at its knees. It will do the same for the UAE, whether privately or in public. But all of the axes, for the first time in I don't know how long, every other state in this region is against the UAE and therefore Israel. Not because of the Gaza genocide,
No.
but because of the UAE.
Very, very, very good highlight.
I
there.
have
Go
to
ahead.
disagree, or no, I don't disagree. I just have a thought. If I was the United States,
He only ate salad today. This is why he's being this way. Go on.
so, I am.
Your sugar level's low.
Yeah, he's slipping down in his seat. He's taking his shoes off. I'm telling you.
Look, Hannah, we've heard about the new Middle East following the assassination of Rafiq al-Hariri in
Where
Beirut.
is Middle East?
No, I'm talking on behalf of the Americans. They said, but
Show
they name
Americans,
it.
Karim. Show
Yeah.
Americans. The US
They,
people.
they named it. They named it the new Middle East, and they, or that day, but many leaks and many people talked about it, that the goal of the new Middle East of the Americans is to divide countries, and they wanted to start it in 2006. And in 2006, they couldn't start it because Hezbollah won over Israel. That was the ignition.
Can I just make one quick point?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. You know how I was talking about the land corridor Saudi Arabia would have right from one side of the Persian Gulf all the way through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. This is another reason that the Emiratis are working with the Israelis to keep Lebanon and Syria divided and even fracture them up physically, geographically, so that Saudi Arabia cannot have the land corridor. Okay, so it's much more complex than just what I described. It includes all the countries of the Levant, basically. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. So in 2006, they wanted to start it following the Israeli war on Lebanon, but they failed. And then the uprising, the spring or whatever they name it, also started. And following that, they started their operations. And until now, unfortunately for me, they succeeded. As we always say it, Libya is 3 countries now. Yemen is at least 2 countries now. If this persists, there will be 3 countries. Syria, God knows how. You have the Kurdish in the north, and Turks taking the north, and the south are the Druze, and on the coast, the Alawite won their own country. And Iraq, the first thing the Americans did, they partitioned it, Kurdistan, Iraq, and the northern Iraq. They don't say South Iraq, but we can name it South Iraq. And unfortunately, Sudan, they did it twice. Sudan in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, or 11, I think in 2014, they annexed 1 million kilometers squared from Sudan. And now they are igniting or fueling the civil war that will furthermore cut the country into pieces. So if I was the Israelis and the Americans and I come and see what's happening in Yemen, the UAE is doing my work. So why I would stand with Saudi Arabia? If I am the Americans, unfortunately I'm not. Gladly I'm not. If we think like the Americans and the Israelis and their role in divide and rule, I will stand with the UAE and I will tell the UAE, ignite it more. We want Yemen to be at least 2 countries or 3 countries. And I will come and to tell Saudi Arabia, sit now on the chair, watch what will happen. Don't interfere. We don't want Yemen as one country. I don't think Saudi Arabia will stand in front of the Israeli project and the American project and the Western project and even the Emirati project alone. In this case,
Saudi Arabia will be over if it allows the UAE to be the main project backed by the Israelis and Americans. It will be over. So it's existential for the Saudis.
yeah, I'm not saying no, Sharmeen, but I am telling if
Yes, you kind of are.
No, I'm not telling
No.
that, Sharmeen. Sharmeen, there's many things that happen in the region that is so complicated. Sometimes I even can't comprehend it. But for instance, Saudi Arabia funded the war of Saddam Hussein against Iran for 9 years. 1 million died. Okay, and because of the money of Saudi Arabia, Saddam Hussein became a very powerful person. Then Saudi Arabia was afraid of him, and then they paid the Americans
That's
come get rid of.
That's right.
This stuff happens in our region. It's a very weird, bloody
All I'm
region,
saying right
unfortunately.
now, for the Saudis and their future, this is existential. Okay?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, but if
it's
the project is bigger than them, I don't think they can act alone. That's my opinion regarding Saudi Arabia.
You know what we've always said? Gaza genocide wouldn't have happened if even a handful of Arab countries stood against it. I am
100%.
saying with the UAE Emirati project, every single regional state, every Arab country, and the two non-Arab regional powers, Iran and Turkey, are against it. I don't think we've had such agreement since maybe the 1970s and the oil embargo and the wars against it. Even then you didn't, you had like collaborators. This is existential. This is very serious. It will be stopped. That's all I'm saying.
I feel like this is existential across the board. I don't mean to cut you guys off, but first of all, I actually just want to say we have over 300 people. Over 300 people watching, but only about 200 likes. So let's bring those likes up. And thank you everyone who's joining us here. I didn't mean to cut you off, Karim. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, I was surprised. I think this is the longest podcast ever. And I just wanted to thank all the people that said on the chat that they like the maps and they thanked me about the maps. I don't know why me. But hopefully next time, because everything is very fast in this region and in the world, hopefully next time we will be able to make maps specifically for our podcasts and specifically for the topics that we will tackle here so people will understand more.
And you know what we might do to get more Patreons, please, is maybe do like daily updates when we have a fast-moving event in the region. If there's a war, for instance, we'll do daily updates and maybe we'll do them just for Patreons because we do need your patronage. And somebody said, the plea I made last week really seemed to work because they intend to become an annual donor today. I can't remember who said that on it, but I think I also said last week that I don't donate to anyone. I'm not a Patreon for anyone because I read so much media and I always figure others will donate. They're thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of users. Others will donate. But this is a time for us to take responsibility. There is no other media outlet like The Cradle that drills really deep and tells you the economics behind the politics. This is something you cannot even argue. No other publication has done this since our inception 4.5 years ago. We were doing routes and maps. When Karim and I first met, I was like, are you good with maps? We need to do maps on this. We need to do maps on that. We need to explain to people why this policy exists. It's because of this trade route. It's because of that potential railway. This is the kind of reporting from this region that you will not find anywhere else.
Exactly. So go ahead.
This is, you have to. If when something happens and Al Jazeera is not giving you any depth, because Al Jazeera is cheering on the Venezuelan, kidnapping, or right, the media you depend on for Palestine, let's say, or you're going to look at what, New York Times or Bloomberg or the Telegraph or the Guardian. You're not going to get those things, or Axios, right? The Israeli view on things. There's one place you can go. I mean, we're small, but we try to get to it. There's one place you can go to try to understand what's happening behind the scenes, and that's The Cradle. So if you don't support, especially if you have not been a Patreon for anyone ever before, because you think everyone else is going to do it, this is the one media outlet that you should become a Patreon for. I really believe this. And if I was on the other side of this, my first Patreon thing would be The Cradle.
If you're going to support an independent news outlet, support The Cradle, because we really uphold that word right there, independent. We really are.
I saw many people يعني now the chat all is about the maps. هلا we can increase our input if you want, and I can put the full file to our patrons also. We can put posts of our full high definition maps that I do, and everybody here disagrees because they tell me who will see them. They are so big, so I think many people here will appreciate them.
Well, if you search up complex conflict situations in our region and you on Google and you put map, it's almost inevitable that a cradle map will come up.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing,
Yeah.
like, you know.
But I will put the full file for Patreon for all our Patreons. هلا from starting next week, I will collect them, and because the things that you see on online, they are usually maximum 3,000 pixels.
Oh my God, that's
I have
true.
10,000 and 8,000
That's
pixels.
true.
so-
That's another
Someone
Patrons
asked,
only get access to our high resolution maps.
and I think that answers the question of Ahalafat, who says, is it better to subscribe on YouTube or Patreon? Patreon. But if you can only subscribe to YouTube, then please do that as well. We accept all support wherever it comes from. I think we can wrap it up for this week. As Karim said, this has been our longest episode, but I think it warranted because truly the empire is running amok, and we're going to continue to bring you all the news as quickly as we can through our social media channels. Follow us there. Follow us on Telegram, on X as The Cradle Media. Follow us on Instagram as TC Media News. Well, check out our Patreon, where you can become a direct supporter to help us continue to do the work that we do here. Make sure to hit that like button and to leave a comment after this video ends. Yes.
One last thing, just to let you know, Esteban, since you weren't on last week, we asked people to weigh in on their favorite T-shirts because we had some that really did very well, and people had asked us to keep them on. And looking at the votes and what people said, we have decided to keep. Do you have the T-shirt, Karim? We have decided.
No, Sharmeen, you didn't.
Okay, just pull it up. Pull it up. The T-shirt that has made the cut by overwhelming preference of our viewers and buyers of our Christmas merch T-shirts is drum roll.
Very
Oh my
long
God,
drum
Karim.
roll.
Karim, come on, man.
Sharmeen, you didn't tell me about.
Just go to the link, damn it.
Yalla.
Okay. Yalla.
Which one?
Yes. Okay, you got it?
Yes.
Drum roll. I don't know how to do drum roll.
We had so many people connected today. I hope Sima is well. Sima is doing well. We'll send her your best. Yeah, they're putting drum rolls here in the chat. You really put the pressure on Karim. I've subbed last week. I gave myself a New Year present. That is actually a very good approach to this. A New Year's resolution subscription, yearly subscription to the Cradle, so you can get all of the latest info and now all of these maps. And soon enough, hopefully, Karim will show us. It's coming up.
Put it. Wow. Is this American technology? So slow.
There's no alternative. If there was an alternative, I would do it.
It's like the payment systems.
Seriously? You already put it on the screen? It's taking this long?
No, it didn't work. I will do it again.
It didn't work. I will do it some other way. Yalla. Oh God, this should
Wallah
have been very
al-azim,
fast.
1 second. Huh? Now it should appear. It didn't appear.
It is not appearing, Karim. I think technology is working against you. Maybe we can put it, I don't know, in the description. We can put a link below. We can put it for
We reached the limit. I can't add more stuff.
Okay, basically, the one that won was the inverted triangle with the beautiful Palestinian fabric, where it says, what does it say?
Resist like Jesus.
Just like Jesus.
I have to say, I was surprised. It was that and the Martyred in Jerusalem T-shirts, which were our biggest sellers. We thought like the Palestine ones would be, but no, the sort of more controversial ones were the biggest sellers, and this one won by a very big majority. So it will be part of our normal stock.
You can find it on our homepage. That's at thecradle.co. So make sure to go check that out. And I think, we can wrap it up finally for this week. Thank you, everyone who joined. Thank you, Sharmeen. Thank you, Karim. And we will see you on Thursday.
Bye. But I will put it لحظة. You all can go, but I will put it لحظة. Okay, that's it. This is the design. You can get hoodie, black and white, t-shirt, black and white, and among with the same design. And also there is a verse from the Bible at the back also in this design, if I'm not mistaken. And it comes in sizes small, medium, large, till 4X.
I still don't
Okay.
see it.
See you guys. Make sure to
Wallah,
get that
it's
t-shirt.
there. It's there. See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
West Asia is always on the map, but rarely in its own voice. This region has been narrated by others for far too long. That's why the Cradle exists, to report from the region, not to speak over it.
Together, the United States
To tell stories with depth, precision, and no editorial leash. Because West Asia is more than just a theater of war. It's the corridor between continents, the energy artery of the world, the cradle of civilization. We don't take government orders. We don't serve corporate boards. We serve clarity, rarity, and rawness, no matter the risk. So if you believe this region deserves better than spin, support the people doing the legwork. Donate. Keep the Cradle independent.